Well, hello there. Seth Olson. I'm the rector here at Holy Apostles in Hoover. Welcome to the last session of Unpacking General Convention, where we look back at the 81st General Convention up in Louisville, Kentucky. It happened a few weeks back. In this particular episode, we look at some of the key resolutions that came before the House of Bishops and the House of Deputies and how they handled some of those. In particular, talk about the amendments to some of our worship, changes that were made to Article 10 and to how we will have opportunity to worship together on Good Friday in the coming years. Also talk about some of the changes to Title IV, the Disciplinary Canons, especially how they impact how we discipline bishops and how that process will hopefully be more pastoral to those who bring the complaints forward. We end on some positive notes, looking at how we're being witnesses to the wider church, how we're combining dioceses so that they can thrive. And then I end with some kind of miscellaneous little kind of tidbits and really a bit of personal privilege, talking about what are the joyful things that the deputies experience when they go to General Convention. So I hope you'll enjoy this, and I hope if you're in the Birmingham area, you'll join us on Sunday mornings. We have worship at 10:30 throughout the year, and then periodically kind of through the programmatic year, and then sometimes in summer, like we've done for the last 3 weeks, we have adult formation, Christian formation at 9:30. Throughout the school year, we have children's formation during the 10:30 service, and we have youth formation for those who are 5th grade and up. We have what's called the Episcopal Youth Community, and they meet for a formation class at 9:30. They also sometimes meet after church for lunch and an activity. So I hope you'll join us. Check us out online, holyapostleshoover.org. Look for us on Facebook. That's probably the best way to get current information from us. And I hope you'll enjoy this class. Blessings on you this day and always. Good morning and welcome to this third and final session of Unpacking General Convention. Hopefully y'all can hear me well enough through the mask. COVID is still going around, as y'all can probably tell. Even coming back from General Convention, there were at least 125 deputies that came back with COVID, and then a goodly dozen at least bishops that came back with it. So it's still floating around. Please take precaution if need be. I can see nobody usually sits in the front row, but especially today, no one is sitting in the front row. But today we'll be talking about some of the key resolutions and just trying to tie a bow on General Convention 81, so I really appreciate y'all coming back. This is a prayer for the mission of the church. It's from, there's a section in the Book of Common Prayer that just has collects for certain occasions, various occasions, and this is one of those. So it feels appropriate because we're talking about these resolutions that hopefully look towards the future of who we are and where we're going as a church. So I will pray this prayer for us, but please join along in your heart. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. O God of all the nations of the earth, remember the multitudes who have been created in your image, but have not known the redeeming work of our Savior Jesus Christ. And grant that, by the prayers and labors of your holy church, they may be brought to know and worship you as you have been revealed in your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God forever and ever. Amen. Just a refresher, this is what General Convention is. It's the governing body of the Episcopal Church, and it meets every 3 years as a bicameral legislature in those two houses, the House of Bishops and the House of Deputies. Those are made up of representatives of people from each and every diocese, both bishops and deputies. Then between conventions, there is Executive Council, which is about 40 members and tries to make good decisions in light of what has been happening in General Convention. Any questions about what General Convention is before we get to deeper purpose and then resolutions? So the deeper purpose of General Convention, it's the ultimate temporal authority of our church, and it's how we express the good news of Jesus Christ and God's love through the church. And it's explicitly expressed, that's kind of hard to say, explicitly expressed through passage of resolutions and elections. We talked about elections last week, and this week we're going to talk about resolutions. This is a recap of how a resolution turns into reality, and had to do a little editing on this because this was from at least General Convention 79 before the pandemic, and so things have changed dramatically because a lot of things actually happen ahead of time online. But I'll walk through how this resolution kind of turns from an idea into something that is an action of the church. So there's a drafting phase, and official committees, commissions, task forces, etc. We talked about those a couple weeks back. If you are not familiar with all those different groups, but there's agencies, there's boards, there's interim bodies, all these different groups. They come together to create reports, and those reports end up in something called the Blue Book. Now, like so many things in the church, it's no longer an actual book. And we'll get, this is going to kind of be a theme, but it's kind of a series of PDFs that is sent out, and you can go online and find any of those, which, as somebody that loves thumbing through a book and reading what's actually, printed on a page, it's a little sad that we no longer have this Blue Book thing. But that's the times that we live in. But that's published ahead of time, and these reports get turned into resolutions. And the resolutions come not just from those interim bodies, but from lots of different groups. And there are A, B, C, D, and there's actually X resolutions as well. So these resolutions, the A ones are from these official bodies that meet between conventions. The B resolutions come from bishops, the C resolutions from dioceses or provinces, and the D resolutions come from deputies. X resolutions are special orders, usually from the dispatch of business or one of the presiding officers. Resolutions are categorized by topics, then assigned ahead of General Convention to one of about 25 different legislative committees. And they figure out, what are we supposed to do with these different resolutions? Does this sound like a good idea for the church? Does this sound like something that we should put into practice? Is this something we should kick down the road? Should we refer it to somebody else? Should we say, no, let's not do this? Or should we take no further action, which is essentially saying no, but in a kind of slightly kinder way. So, yes?
What's the difference between a diocese and a province?
Great question. So Gail asked, what's the difference between a diocese and a province? So dioceses are groups of churches like in the northern 2/3 of our state, Diocese of Alabama, or the southern part of our state and panhandle of Florida being Central Gulf Coast. Those are two dioceses. Both of those dioceses are part of something larger called a province, which is a group of dioceses. That's essentially what a province is. Now, some provinces don't have an in-person meeting, but Province 4, which we're a part of, we do meet together in person, and it's usually a nice event. This year's provincial meeting was at Camp Cayuga. We've hosted it at McDowell a couple years back, so it's a nice gathering. We all get together, we vote on provincial officers, we talk about what's happening at the upcoming General Convention. Sometimes somebody from the presiding bishop's staff will come and give a presentation. It's usually a really nice event, but sometimes, occasionally, provinces will put forth a resolution, and that has a little bit more weight because it's 20 or so dioceses saying something in concert. So So yeah, that's what a province is, and a difference between a diocese and a province. Any other questions before we keep going to what is an important step in the recommendation phase? All right, so here in step 3, these different legislative committees make a recommendation. Like what I was saying just a minute ago, should we do this? Should we not do this? What's the will of this legislative committee? And then what they'll do is they'll have meetings, and now these meetings are online, and you, as just a regular Episcopalian, could sign up to attend these meetings, to observe them, or to even testify if you felt really strongly about a certain resolution. And so in many ways, what's happened as a result of the pandemic is this work has become more inclusive. Because it used to be that if you wanted to testify, if you felt really strongly about a certain resolution, you'd have to fly to Louisville, Kentucky, or wherever General Convention was going to be, and you'd have to show up a couple days early and know which legislative committee you're supposed to go to and what meeting room they're in, and it's usually a challenge to find those things out. And then you have to stand up and testify in a group of people. Instead, now you can kind of rehearse it and do it basically on Zoom. And they're even creating a mechanism, so if you wanted to give testimony on a resolution, but you didn't really, if you were an introvert or somebody that didn't like speaking in front of people, you could write out your testimony and give it to the appropriate committee. So trying to be more inclusive of people with kind of different abilities in that way. So once the recommendation has been made, it goes to a house of initial action. And so the House of Bishops they're the House of Initial Action for all kind of prayer book things, because we think bishops are going to be the ones that kind of have a good purview of that. So they are the House of Initial Action on certain things. Now, if they vote something down, if they say, we do not want to do this, then it kind of stops there. In the same way as if the House of Deputies said, we don't want to do anything with this, it would stop there. But then, if they do want to kind of hold up what has been said, then it goes to the other house. And sometimes those resolutions may have been amended, they may have been substituted with something that's similar, and then for something to become an official act of General Convention, both houses have to concur with the exact same language of whatever that resolution is. All that makes sense so far? Okay. So when something's been adopted and concurred, then it becomes an official act of General Convention. So, now that you kind of have a better sense, yes, Gene?
Is there a floor vote, or is it just the two houses agree and it's done?
Is there a what?
Floor vote.
Is there a floor vote? So that's a good question. So, the way that voting happens, it just kind of depends. It depends on a couple of things. There are certain changes. If we're making a change to the canons or to the prayer book, those have to be done in something called a vote by orders. And a vote by orders is the lay people from a deputation and the clergy people. This is just in the House of Deputies. House of Deputies, vote by orders. You would have just the lay people and just the clergy people kind of get together in caucus, and then the chair of the deputation will kind of count the votes and see, okay, the lay people are 3 people for this, 1 person against it, so it would be we're for it. And in the clergy, we've got 2 people for it and 2 people against it. That would be divided, and so you would cast that vote as divided. So there are certain votes that end up having to be using the kind of voting software in a special case like a vote by orders. There are some votes that are just votes by kind of yay or nay, and if it's a simple majority, it's pretty easy to tell which side won that. But there are certain occasions when it's too close to tell, and so then that vote would have to be done using the voting software. So there does have to be a floor vote, but it's usually a floor vote to either adopt something or concur if the House of Bishops is the House of Initial Action. Does that make sense? So not everything goes to a floor vote, because some things end up on the consent calendar, which is sometimes it's like 20 or 30 or 40 resolutions long, and you're basically saying, we agree with whatever the legislative committee said to do. Not necessarily to consent to it. If the legislative committee said, we don't want to do anything with this, then you'd be voting for whatever action they're recommending. So, all right. See, by the end of this, y'all are all going to be able to go to General Convention and serve as a deputy there. It's my secret plan. All right. Yeah, not so secret anymore, that's right. I just want more representation of Holy Apostles at the larger church level, that's all. So, some key resolutions from General Convention 81. So we'll kind of click on these in just a second. We'll see the resolution, the title, and then why it matters. If you can't see from where you're sitting, don't worry, I'll kind of break these out a little bit. So Resolution A164 is pretty important. It's the budget for the Episcopal Church over the next 3 years. It's a $143 million budget over the course of 3 years. Most of that comes from diocesan assessments, but then there's also other revenue like investments, and we do hold some very valuable property at 815 2nd Avenue in Manhattan. There's a lot of conversation about getting rid of that so that we can have less overhead. Our treasurer told us at this General Convention that essentially breaks even, which is better than it costing us a whole bunch of money, but still there are cheaper places to kind of, and more geographically central places to put a diocese or a church-wide office. So the budget, I think there was a lot of conversations. Most of the budget, I think most of the deputies were excited about, because it is a lot about mission. And that's really what's, at least to me, what's most important. It's hard to tell, when you're going to need the administrative pieces that you need, and exactly how those are needed to be implemented. But, you have to have things like lawyers. You have to have things like administrative assistants. You have to have things like IT assistants. And there were some disconcerting moments in the budget hearing, because there was at least 2 occasions when somebody said, well, look at this line in the budget. There's nothing in the, like the what this is for line, but there's $25,000 here. And, in a $143 million budget, $25,000 is not a ton, but to find out that there's $25,000 that's actually unassigned is a good thing. But it's also a bad thing that the treasurer is not catching it. So there's this kind of, right, like this a little bit of, are we actually doing all the work that we need to be doing to ensure that we're allowing our mission to be the thing that's guiding us, and not our budget guiding our mission, if that makes sense. So that was Resolution A164. And let me see if I can get my mouse over here. I can. So at this point in the original recording, something messed up. There was a technological difficulty, and the recording cut out. So I'm going to share some insights about these next several slides to fill you in on some other key resolutions. So one of the top issues that we saw coming into Louisville was how the General Convention was going to handle Title IV and the disciplinary process. If you're unfamiliar with Title IV, it's the canon which governs clergy discipline. General Convention routinely updates Title IV, and this is to keep up with the ever-changing way that we can take care of one another and safeguard those in the church. It's a hard responsibility being a clergy person, but there has to be some guidelines for keeping clergy in good health and allowing them to kind of prosper and thrive, and creating an environment where everyone can thrive and where everyone can feel safe. So there was a series of proposals leading up to General Convention that was submitted specifically in response to concerns from virtually across the church that our current disciplinary process has been causing harm, additional harm, to those complainants, especially when clergy, bishops in particular, are not held to the same disciplinary standards as really other clergy. So even the Episcopal News Service published the memorial that was written by the Young Adult Caucus leading up to General Convention that was urging and really imploring, begging the church to make serious changes to Title IV. And as you can see on this slide, that 3 presiding bishop candidates have even faced Title IV disciplinary claims, and 2 of those cases were actually active leading into General Convention. Now, it's a sticky thing, right? To open up the process so that it essentially becomes transparent from the word go, from any time a complaint is registered. And so some people were wondering, even implying that Title IV was, in this new version of the kind of reporting process, Title IV was being weaponized, was being used to target specific members of the slate for the presiding bishop. I don't know if that's true, but if you look at it, I mean, the 3 candidates that received these complaints against them were either a woman or people of color, right? So there's something at least to note that causation and correlation do not go hand in hand. It doesn't mean that that's definitely something untoward is happening here, but I do note that neither Sean Rowe nor Scott Barker had any complaints registered against them. They also happen to be the 2 top vote getters during the election process in the House of Bishops. But anyways, there were going back to kind of generally speaking, Title IV. There were 28 resolutions that were assigned to deal with that had something to do with Title IV. And either, all of them except one were either passed in both houses with or without amendment or referred to an interim body. Only one resolution did the convention decide to take no further action on. And so several of the resolutions that have to do with Title IV were proposed by the Standing Commission on Structure, Governance, Constitution, and Canons. And this is from an ENS article, to improve accountability in the disciplinary process. These were all passed. A053, for example, seeks to ensure the independence of the complaint intake officer, who should not also be tasked with providing pastoral care to complainants. There needs to be a separation of those responsibilities. A139 mandates an intake report be filed within 45 days of a complaint. And there was some conversation about whether that timeline, I think it moved from 30 up to 45 because there were some canons to the ordinary that were speaking up and saying, look, 30 days is wonderful in theory, but in actuality, it's really hard to get that response out there. And then A140 mandates that a reference panel meet within 45 days of receiving the intake report to determine next steps. A054 clarifies the role and authority of the church attorney, and A055 clarifies the role of Title IV investigators. Really, all of these were in hopes of trying to make the process more clear, more streamlined, so that somebody who registers a complaint is not sitting out there feeling like, okay, I've said this thing, I've shared this terrible thing that's happened to me, or this thing I perceive as being terrible, and nothing's going to happen. Like, it's just going to just keep on going for forever. So 45 days is still a long time to wait if you feel like you've been wronged. So it's still, God forbid anything happen, but we know these things do happen. So we have to do our best to create a safe environment for everyone, and to ensure that everyone's being held to the same standards as much as we possibly can. So that's the changes in Title IV. Let's move on to some more joyful resolutions, shall we? So there were several key resolutions that had to do with changes in dioceses and joining dioceses back together. In the case of Eastern and Western Michigan, they are now going to function as the Diocese of the Great Lakes. They took great care to ensure that those in other parts of the world that share borders with the Great Lakes, well, that they're not trying to steal that moniker from them, but just sounded like a really positive name change. There was excitement, and I'll share a video in just a moment that kind of shows their excitement. So that was a good moment. That was a positive moment, as was the reunion of the Diocese of Wisconsin. That's the Diocese of Eau Claire, Fond du Lac, and Milwaukee coming back together. They, incidentally, won the Disco Ball trophy for having the foresight to plan their stanchion signs such that they could kind of come together, Voltron or Power Ranger style, to make this unified diocese. It was really cool, even though I was hoping that our Alabama stanchion would take the cake, or the disco ball in this case. So both of these will be positives because they'll allow for some sharing of resources. I believe in the case of Eastern and Western Michigan, one of those dioceses has been without a bishop for several years. So that's a hard reality to imagine for us in my context in the Diocese of Alabama, where we're gifted, we're privileged to have two bishops. We have our diocesan bishop and we have our assisting bishop, and that makes it such that bishops get to just about every parish every year, and that is a gift. That is a real gift. So I'm hopeful for these 5 dioceses becoming 2 different dioceses, that they'll be able to have more resources available so that they can thrive, in their context. So that was Resolution C025 and D051. Resolution B006 was formalizing a ministry partnership that already exists in practice. I don't believe there are many Episcopal churches in Micronesia, but they function really as a missionary presence from the Diocese of Hawaii. So this is just formalizing that relationship. And then maybe the most holy, poignant moment, one of them, at least on the legislative floor, came when Resolution C009 passed. And there was great rejoicing as the petition for the Episcopal Church in Navajo land to actually become a missionary diocese, and what that petition was heard and was concurred upon in both the houses. So it's a beautiful moment, and it righted a wrong that's existed for a long time. That we've still been holding on to that colonial mindset that we get to say, this is what you get to do. We will choose your bishop. and as a mostly white church, telling the native people of Navajo land what they can and cannot do. That kind of reeks of all the troubling things that we now know about that sort of colonial evangelization that has really destroyed trust in the church amongst some people of color and some native people. So this I hope will make right something that's been wrong for a while, and it's an exciting time to think about and to kind of witness how Navajo land is going to raise up and call someone probably from within that will be their next bishop, and that will be really, really cool. So let's look at some of these videos. Here's one that is the Diocese of Eastern and Western Michigan reuniting.
Yell, chat, clap, cheer, stand up, cheer.
So they were reunited, and usually when the presiding officer, the chair of the House of Deputies, says, we're going to vote by acclamation, it's a really positive thing. We're all standing up and showing our support for these dioceses and what they're setting out to accomplish. But again, this wasn't the only diocese the only two dioceses that combined. There was these three that made the Diocese of Wisconsin, and here's that moment that came late in convention at the very end, because in part both of these happened on the last day, and in part that was so that the deputations could really function independently one last time, and that their deputies could be present and do this work before that number decreases at the next convention. So instead of having 8 among Eastern and Western Michigan and 12 among Fond du Lac, Milwaukee, and Eau Claire, that they'll only have 4 clergy and 4 lay deputies. So it'll be different. But this was the scene with streamers and celebration on the last day of convention.
The matter before the House is to adopt Resolution D-051. Let us do so by acclamation as we congratulate the Diocese of Fond du Lac, Eau Claire, and Milwaukee to become the Diocese of Wisconsin.
I was grateful to see my friend Tyler Richards up there on the platform too, a former member of the Diocese of Alabama. So again, here's maybe the highlight. One of the highlights of convention was Navajo land becoming that missionary diocese, and seeing the members of their deputation up on the platform was definitely a holy and transformative moment for me personally. In part because they were our neighbors at convention, and we got to know them a good bit better. So a challenging moment of convention, and challenging in that we were challenging others to see something differently, was late in the week we had a march during our lunchtime break. It was a march led by young people and bishops. The Bishops United Against Gun Violence has been around, I believe this is the 3rd or 4th General Convention. And the witness that we provided with those who were in downtown Louisville at that time, and those who have witnessed pictures and have seen this in the days since. The witness we provided was that the time is now for us to address gun violence with sensible gun laws, to stand up against those who say this is some sort of infringement upon rights, when especially our young people are crying out and saying, enough. We are spending our entire childhoods doing active shooter drills. Do you know how damaging this is to us? And can we not see that the safety of our young people is more important than someone's right to have, especially an automatic weapon, a high capacity weapon that can do so much damage, to destroy so many lives. So this was a powerful moment. And you'll see on the slide there are folks holding up these placards that have been hanging in the cathedral in Louisville, where they have been praying. They prayed throughout the year 2023. Anytime there was a mass shooting, they would put up another placard. And if you look very closely in the background of the picture on the right, you'll note that I'm one of the figures holding up those signs of 2 shootings that happened in Birmingham. 2 shootings in Birmingham, 2 mass shootings in 2023. There's actually probably many more. I know that there was one recently that took the total over 80 people who have died by homicide this year, and that Birmingham is, in particular, the 3rd most dangerous city to live in the United States. So we're not immune to it. Where I am in my context here, where we are at Holy Apostles. So the time is now to stand up and to say, look, we're all for people having kind of the opportunity for responsible gun ownership, but it's clear that that's not happening in large, like across the country. So powerful moment, powerful witness. I was grateful to be a part of it. And you'll note also that a lot of bishops are wearing orange, which is not their traditional color. The color orange, as you may know if you're a hunter, is a color to distinguish yourself from wildlife, to say, please don't shoot. And so that orange is a symbol to the rest of the world to say, please don't shoot. So, in case you were thinking that I was just sitting back and kind of not doing very much at General Convention, there was a lot of work that I was putting in as chairperson, and then additionally, that administrative role meant that I was switching people in and out. Our deputation had a couple of alternates, so we had folks that could step in and did want to step in for certain sessions, and so we had a good rotation going. But that required some work on the chair, and there was also opportunity to testify, to stand before the whole house, almost 1,000 people there. A little intimidating to stand and try to make an articulate point. So you'll note I had my computer with me. But I was testifying in the top right corner there. I was testifying to say that gun violence should be considered a health crisis in our country, and was testifying in part on behalf of our siblings at St. Stephen's in Vestavia Hills, where they have experienced the loss of 3 parishioners in the last couple of years, when their lives were tragically taken at a potluck, of all places. In the lower right corner, I was testifying on an unsuccessful resolution, trying to refocus our resources to discern if we might resource our local churches and dioceses by decreasing our assessment to the wider Episcopal Church. Now, while that failed, you may know if you watched a couple weeks ago that I am happy with the result that our presiding bishop has kind of, at least vocally, our presiding bishop-elect has said that he wants to get more resources to the local level, and that's really what I was asking for in that moment. Now, the one on the left is more of a lighthearted moment that I was leading a charge along with a couple others, including a deputy from Delaware, and others, that we would try to end debate and vote immediately, and that's what I was standing up to do in microphone 7 there. So that happened quite often. So yes, and I share all that not because this is ego show time or patting myself on the back, but to say that we all can testify. Like that's the power of a general convention, is that as a deputy you have a voice and you can stand up, and even more powerful than anything I said was listening to the official youth presence. They stood up often and corrected us, sometimes grammatically, but sometimes prophetically. They were calling us to see things that we can't see or that I couldn't see. And so testifying at General Convention is a really holy thing, at least to me, and I was grateful to be able to do that. So in conclusion, tying a bow around this General Convention 81 experience in this a little 3-week unpacking of General Convention. General Convention is a really energizing time, at least for me, to get to see the work of the larger church. Now, it also is exhausting. And the thing that makes it worthwhile is the relationships that are either built upon or started. And so this last slide is just some of the things that I was gifted in being able to do. You'll see up in the top left, that was Camp Day, and Bishop Pryor taking his traditional selfie with us in front of the Camp McDowell booth. Kind of looking downwards, there was this great CPG booth in the style of, I think that's Jay Sidebotham that does the church calendar cartoons, and so that was Greetings from Louisville. Got to go on a run one day. Church Pension Group also had this AI generated look into your future, and my picture down here is just horrendous. It looks terrifying. I don't know where the hair comes from, but pretty rough. I got to see my former New Testament professor and the outgoing dean of the Seminary of the Southwest, Cynthia Kittredge, a couple of times, including at the seminary gathering where I got to see several of my classmates and cohorts and friends in a couple of these pictures. The bunny ears are from our House of Deputies meeting at night, Deputies After Dark, or the Episco Disco is what it was actually called. Met a man, a deputy from Delaware. I don't know what it was, connections with Delaware, but this deputy from Delaware here, this kind of gray-haired guy, is named Ted Olson, and that's Teddy Olson is my son, so I had to take a picture with him. Got to see some really good friends, some seminary classmates, and get to go out to dinner with them one night. Again, we've got really the best deputation in the whole church, and some of the best support staff, and our diocesan bishop and our assisting bishop are just so wonderful. You'll see some pictures where we were supporting Lulu Gribben, who, if you see those purple ribbons around, that's what that's about, and that's us wearing purple, celebrating her, and a concluding Eucharist selfie here, the bottom right corner. So really, it's about those relationships, and that's honestly what church is, right? It's about building up these relationships with our neighbors so that we might know more fully that most important relationship with God in Christ, and that we might serve our neighbors, serve our communities, serve all of creation that has been made by God, and that we might, through all of those things, might show the love of God to each other into this hurting world. So yeah, that's what it was like to be at General Convention 81. Hope you've enjoyed this look into the inner workings of the polity of our church. And if you ever have any questions about it, I hope you'll reach out to me. You can email me at seth@holyapostleshoover.org. And blessings upon you this day and always.